And I know that you have been involved in science for over 40 years. You said you arrived to Ireland in 1978, so which is like 41 years ago. And short questions with the short answer.
Right.
You mentioned previously that when you started studying climatology, there was the topic of climate change. It wasn't fashionable, let's put it this way. Yeah? So do you remember the year when global climate change or global warming became part of the international agenda and became like a keyword in all funding calls?
Yes, I mean, climate change was something which, if you were in a weather service in the 1960s or 70s, to be told you were the climatologist was not considered a very lucrative and attractive job. It was considered more an archival job. I guess that applied really up until the early 1980s. I think there were times when Professor Hansen, for example, in the United States, made his key submission to Congress. I think that must have been in the middle 80s. I'm not sure exactly when, maybe a bit later. But there was no seminal moment when the people suddenly got aware of the issue. What has been happening is the scientists have been telling the story for a long time. The public have only recently grasped the message. And in a way, that's a failure of science as much as anything else, and a failure of science communication, because it comes as no surprise to many scientists what's happening today. They've been warning about it for about 20 years now, but it does come as a surprise to the public that we are facing such acute problems down the road.
So we're talking
about that, right? I didn't give you a date.
So basically,
sure.
mid-80s, yeah?
Yeah,
That's
mid-80s,
when
I think.
the topic became popular.
Jim Hansen's stuff would probably be considered seminal, and I suppose the third and this was before the first IPCC report. And the scientists were establishing little groups in the mid-80s to try and establish whether climate change was natural or anthropogenic. I guess, you know, many scientists even then knew it was anthropogenic, but I suppose it was really, maybe I should have said the first IPCC report in 1990 was a key.
So that's when the fashion started?
Yeah, I think that's when, I know that there were scientists closeted in little rooms and hotel rooms in the 1980s and asked by the International Council for Science to report on whether climate change was a reality and we should be concerned about it. And it was their report which led to the setting up of the IPCC. I think there was also the Rio meeting of, was it 1992 or something like that?
Early 90s, I don't remember.
I think it was the 90s, where the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was set up and signed by the countries attending that Rio meeting. That would be a seminal point. Gro Harlem Brundtland had been talking about sustainable development up to that point, but it was after the Rio conference that things began to really fall into place quickly. You know, I don't know the date for that.
Yeah, that doesn't
I think
matter.
it's 92. It could be 92 or so, but I'm not sure.
And